Mariah Carey was the quintessential vocal diva of the 90s. In fact, she was the best-selling artist of the 90s decade entirely, male or female. A crowning achievement that will also place her atop as one of the best-selling female artists of all time. However, as the 2000s began to emerge, there were many obstacles that threatened the Songbird Supreme's career longevity. Mariah Carey's success, stardom, downfall, and emancipation is truly one for the books. With the disaster that Glitter caused, Mariah's career seemed like she was on the path of becoming a 90s nostalgia act. Just another artist failing to transition into another decade or era. Or at least that's what the media made it seem like. But against all odds, she would release a huge comeback album that would forever cement her legacy. And decades later, she's still topping the charts with her classic Christmas standard. Glitter might not have been her prime, but after a small tumble from grace, Mariah would come back and still shine. To understand why Glitter was viewed as such a huge disappointment, you have to understand the huge success. Mariah didn't have moderate success. She was a superstar, the best-selling artist of an entire decade. Mariah whistled her way to superstardom in 1990 with her self-titled debut record, which became a massive success, selling over 15 million copies worldwide. The album featured her breakout hit Vision of Love. Many vocal giants such as Beyoncé and Christina Aguilera have cited this album as a vocal influence. The album brought her a lot of press, and many critics were even skeptical of her talent and claimed that she was only a studio singer, due to her performances mostly being on TV. Even though they were live televised performances where she clearly sung, people still had a great amount of doubt. As her success grew, people began to question why she hadn't performed more live shows or concerts. They had remained scarce up until she was a few albums deep into her career. Needless to say, they were skeptical for no reason, because Mariah is a natural talent who sung, wrote, and even co-produced the majority of her discography. Her follow-up Emotions in 1991 features the classic title track of the same name, which is noted for the famous whistles that has been attempted by everyone. Her sophomore album wasn't as big as her debut album, but it was far from a sophomore slump. To combat questioning of her singing and vocal ability, Mariah released her MTV Unplugged record and did an entire Unplugged concert for MTV. Her version of the Jackson 5's I'll Be There became so popular after MTV Unplugged that it became a single, a #1 smash single. It's weird to think that there was a time at the beginning of Mariah's career where her vocal ability was questioned, considering the amount of extraordinary talent she possessed, on and off record. Nowadays, you can have 1/100th of the vocal talent she possesses, not give great performances whether on TV or in concert. You can even whisper off key on or off record, and there still wouldn't be as much questioning around vocal talent like Mariah had experienced. But to be fair, Mariah isn't just a normal pop singer, she's a vocalist, and the whistle register is not very common, even in the greatest vocalist. So I'm sure people were eager to see how she would do live, not just doing one song, but a continuous set to see if her voice actually held up. And quite obviously, it did. 1993's Music Box was Mariah's blockbuster album, and it's still her most popular record to date. During the Music Box era, she also wed Tommy Mottola, who was the CEO of Sony Music during the time, the label that Mariah was also signed to. Tommy played a huge part in Mariah's life and career. Music Box featured some of her biggest hits, such as Hero and Dream Lover. The album and its hits were wildly popular. Subsequently, Music Box became one of the best-selling albums in history, selling over 28 million copies globally. Regarding her move into a more R&B-infused world regarding her next record, Mariah stated, "Apart from the ambition, Tommy and I were completely different, and the black part of myself caused him confusion. From the moment Tommy signed me, he tried to wash the urban translation black off of me. And it was no different when it came to the music. The songs on my very first demo, which would become my first smash album, were much more soulful, raw, and modern in their original state. Just as he did with my appearance, Tommy smoothed out the songs for Sony, trying to make them more general, more universal, more ambiguous. Always felt like he wanted to convert me into what he understood, a mainstream, meaning white artist." As Mariah began to blend the world of pop, R&B, and hip-hop, she would get pushback from her label because they wanted her to remain super pop. So to please the label, she would usually do a pop version of her records. Then she would do a remix, which would usually feature her favorite rappers in a more R&B and hip-hop influenced sound, a formula that is still quite popular today. Mariah Carey combined pop and hip-hop, and she's largely the reason you see your favorite pop stars today guess their favorite rappers on a remix of their song. Later, she would even help hip-hop legends such as Jay-Z achieve his first #1 single on the Hot 100. Her very first dive into the remix was on her 5th album, Daydream, on a song called Fantasy, which is easily one of her most popular songs. She remixed the song alongside rapper ODB. Her label initially wasn't very enthusiastic about the remix, and even thought it might cause her to lose some of her audience and the formula that made her popular. But being that it was just a remix and not the main single, they agreed to it. The Fantasy remix became wildly popular, and actually helped expand her fanbase, and it features one of the most whimsical yet endearing rap verses on a pop song of all time, from ODB. The Fantasy remix introduced rap features on pop songs to popular culture, and its influence echoed on throughout the 90s decade, and is still extremely present today. The album also featured more signature songs from Mariah, such as Always Be My Baby and One Sweet Day. The combination of pop, hip-hop, and R&B also made Mariah a varied artist, reaching over into many different markets, causing Daydream to be another blockbuster smash, selling over 20 million copies. After Daydream, Mariah's marriage to Tommy Mottola began to crumble. She was being mentally abused, he controlled her career, personal life, and had spies and cameras watching her non-stop. She often felt like a prisoner under his control. Mariah compared it to a teen and parent arrangement, when independence is earned in increments. She will ultimately begin a relationship with Derek Jeter while still being married to Tommy, and Derek inspired most of the music on her 6th album, Butterfly. Butterfly was a full dive into R&B and hip-hop, and remains her strongest effort to date. Butterfly is largely symbolic of her freedom from Tommy, and her artistic freedom. Her label was hesitant about Butterfly because it was extremely R&B influenced. It wasn't like her previous albums where she somewhat flirted with the idea of R&B and hip-hop. It was a headshot right in between the two genres. Honey was the first music video where Mariah had full creative control to do whatever she wanted, and if you pay attention you will notice that it's quite symbolic. Mariah is held captive in a mansion. She escapes, jumps into a pool, and she re-emerges with less clothes. At the beginning of her career, she was very covered up and modest. So Butterfly was not only an artistic turning point, but also a fashion turning point. But the Honey music video overall just represents her newfound freedom at the time, finally leaving Tommy Mottola in the dust, at least personally. It wouldn't help any situation if your ex-husband is also the CEO of your label or workplace. Mariah and Tommy also didn't end on good terms, and what finally prompted Mariah to leave Tommy is Tommy allegedly threatening her by rubbing a knife on her face. After she left Tommy, she was afraid that he might be out to destroy her, considering the enormous amount of power he had. Around the time of Butterfly, Mariah began working on All That Glitters. However, production will be halted for the album and movie. Rainbow was released in 1999 and was embroiled in a lot of label infighting concerning single choices and the direction of the album. Mariah desperately wanted to release Can't Take That Away as a single. Sony refused, but eventually agreed because Mariah was their best-selling artist. The agreement was a faulty one, and the single was released to limited promotion. Tommy had a strong vendetta against Mariah, and everything at the label had to go through him to get approved, which led Mariah to visit the president of the entire Sony corporation. She worked out a deal that would allow her to leave the label, which featured Rainbow, a greatest hits album, and a remix album. Mariah stated, "Rainbow closed out the 20th century, and for me was the bridge to freedom. But as they say, freedom ain't free." She would go on to sign a groundbreaking $100 million record deal with Virgin Records, lasting for 5 albums, and that allowed her to have full creative control. Unfortunately, that wouldn't stop Tommy's outreach, and that leads us to Glitter. Speaking of Glitter, she said, "Much of what went wrong with Glitter led back to Tommy. He was angry about the divorce and my departure from Sony, and he used all his power and connections to punish me. And everybody else around me knew it was happening, including my new label. Tommy and his cronies went as far as taking promotional items like my stand-up advertisements out of the record stores. It was a real fight. He didn't want it to look like I could succeed on my own without him, so he even interfered with the Glitter soundtrack." Glitter was supposed to be like Mariah's The Bodyguard moment, a movie and soundtrack that would bring her into the world of acting, an undeniable smash. The movie script would experience a ton of rewrites, to the point that Mariah would not be satisfied with the finished product. The Glitter movie is still pretty disposable, even today. The Glitter soundtrack, however, is pretty good. The Glitter era is remembered for many things, and one of the most popular remembrances is that it sparked the line, "I don't know her." A certain female entertainer's career was essentially boosted simply as a way to get back at Mariah Carey. She's clearly just a product, she's never been vocally talented, however she could put on a good show and entertain people quite well. And she was marketable, which worked in her favor. Mariah speaks about this said entertainer, going on to say, "And then there was the sabotage. I had written the lyrics to Loverboy. The melody was tight and it had an infectious groove. Super producer Clark Kent and I had chosen Firecracker by Yellow Magic Orchestra as the sample, and the few insiders working on the film's production were really loving it. That did not go unnoticed by Sony executives and spies. I had chosen the song and paid to have it used in the movie."
And then there was the sabotage. After hearing my new song, using the same sample I used, Sony rushed to make a single for another female entertainer on their label, whom I don't know. They used the Firecracker sample and released it before Loverboy. Ja Rule and I wrote a song together too, and next thing you know, Tommy was calling up his manager Irv Gotti, asking him and Ja to collaborate on a duet for the same female entertainer's record, leaving me to scurry and remake the song. Irv has even discussed it since in an interview on Dave and Mero. He knows we just did this shit with Mariah, and he's trying to with Mariah. This was sabotage, plain and simple. Look, I was well trained in the art of turning situations into fertilizer, but Tommy knew with my artistic choices was particularly low. But I wouldn't let him stop me. I switched gears and turned from the techno influence to a funkier sample from Candy by Cameo. You can't go wrong with Cameo. And after all that Loverboy ended up being the best-selling single of 2001 in the United States. I'm real.
Mariah went on multiple promotional tours for Glitter. Her label was freaking out because Loverboy had only peaked at number 2. Mariah didn't see such a big deal with it, considering it was just a soundtrack, and still was the best-selling song of the year. Mariah's promotional campaign for Glitter and Loverboy eventually landed her on TRL, in an incident that was very over-sensationalized, where she made a surprise appearance, but really it was all staged. Mariah claims that she wasn't stripping, she was revealing, which is just classic Mariah talk. She freestyled her dialogue, and ultimately her TRL appearance was simply a stunt gone wrong. It wasn't meant to be taken seriously, but unfortunately it caught a ton of negative backlash. Mariah continued working vigorously, barely getting any sleep, on top of having conflict with her family and ex-husband. Everywhere Mariah would go and try to hide to get her sleep, her label would come looking for her.
"I am calling to say that I love you to my fans. I hope this message gets to you. I'm not going to be, Glitter's going to be out soon, and you're going to have that. And then I'm going to be taking some time off. I can't reach you guys, so I'd like to say that, Nancy, I will record and stuff. It's just that I needed some time off, but nobody was really giving it to me. And I feel that that's only because of a situation that we've been dealing with for a while, and that my managers were a little upset about it, and they were trying to press on and get through it, but that didn't work, and so it's nobody's fault, really. It's just that I worked, an incident took place that I'm not trying to have any bad karma surrounding by telling people's names. And what I would like to do is just take a little break, or at least get one night of sleep without someone popping up about a video or a thing, when all I really want to do is to be me, and that's what I should have done in the first place. But somebody had me, people, whatever. I allowed myself to be a little bit too paranoid about life. And life is for living, so.
Mariah was eventually hospitalized for exhaustion, and during that time, which was unbeknownst to the public, she was diagnosed with bipolar II disorder. Mariah also later revealed that she wasn't aware that she was checking herself into rehab. She had thought she was going to a spa. Her brother had convinced her to go, but when she arrived, it looked like a detox center, and later revealed it was rehab. She was too exhausted to decline, and didn't even read over everything properly before signing papers. Eventually, Glitter was released, and so was Mariah. Glitter was released on September 11, 2001, which was obviously a terrible day, and the negative press leading up to Glitter didn't help its sales. The movie was a massive box office bomb, and the Glitter soundtrack was her worst selling effort at that point in time. Virgin Records bought Mariah out of her $100 million contract, and this was pretty much seen as the end of Mariah Carey. Charm Bracelet, released in 2002, would be a victim of the debris Glitter left behind, and is one of her lost albums. Mariah would return in full force in 2005 with the Emancipation of Mimi. I find the Emancipation of Mimi very similar to Butterfly in many ways, but mostly because they are artistic high points for her that also serve as a catalyst for her freedom and reclaiming a narrative. The Emancipation of Mimi is a career victory for Mariah, and it is undoubtedly one of her most fulfilled efforts. For years, Mariah would avoid Glitter, and it was even her only album not available for streaming until recently. It has received a resurgence, and even a fan-led campaign called #JusticeForGlitter, which powered the album to the top of the iTunes charts after nearly 2 decades after its release. The Justice for Glitter movement will also inspire many other fan-led campaigns, powering their favorite artists' older albums to the top of the iTunes charts. Although Glitter is far from a great movie, Glitter was quite clearly a failure due to Mariah being overworked, label infighting, personal vendettas against her, and the bad press she received. The soundtrack for the movie is quite good, and truly nothing to be ashamed of. Glitter was a monstrous failure, but it made for an amazing comeback. The Emancipation of Mimi is certainly one of the best, if not the best, pop music comeback of its respective decade.